everybody, and welcome to the Philly Sports Convo. It's our debut episode. This is a brand new podcast, conversations with the biggest names in Philly sports. And my first guest, I wanted this guy on the first show because he's a guy that I've known for over 2 decades, admired the guy. We go back to the days of WB17, and he's done it all, and he's done it well. And in my opinion, the guy's a legend. It is the great Mike Missanelli. Mike, thanks for doing this. Welcome to the podcast. Good to have you, man.
My pleasure, Jason. It looks like you got a really cool rec room you're doing this from, too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate
really,
that.
It's really nice. I like it. Yeah,
Well,
I'm not nearly as sophisticated as you right now.
Well, no one's ever called me that, Mike. I'm not sure how to respond.
No, you got the seats there. You got the stadium seats. You got the pictures. You got the bobbleheads. You got it all.
I try, and listen, just between us. So when we got the house, I said to my wife, you can have the entire house. Just give me the basement. So she did. So this is my little room down here, but there's still a picture of Barry Manilow on the wall. And,
No. Yeah, I don't know what you can do about that. You got to throw tomatoes at that.
But you know what's weird, though, Mike? I mean, I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but when I hear Barry Manilow come on the radio, I don't turn it off anymore. And I don't know why.
Wow, you're growing up. You're growing up.
Is that what it is? I don't know.
Yeah. I love his, my favorite hit of his is Looks Like Tomatoes. So
listen, I mean, I could talk to you all night. Before we talk about, I want to delve into your career and all the cool stuff you've done and all the cool people you've worked with. But I want to talk about what you're doing now because, as always, you've got a lot going on. You got the podcast, you got the Eagles postgame, you got a winery, for God's sakes. Give me the rundown.
Well, yeah, the podcast is a really interesting thing that I'm doing right now. Bet Rivers people came to me after I stepped down from radio and had this idea. And I didn't really know that much about podcasting, to be honest with you. I mean, I started out at the very basic of journalism, which was the print journalism, which we all thought was going to last forever. And then it evolved into kind of radio and TV, and now it's the next stage of podcast. And, the thing that took me a little while to adjust to was not having the caller impact and caller feedback, immediate feedback, because I really like that. I like playing around with the calls and I like having the conversations. But I look at it like it's a can of condensed soup. You condense it into sort of 45 minutes of good content,
right?
And it's basically the same me without me going to a call.
So you fill up the can of water and you pour it in the pot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I can riff on pretty much anything. And so what I try to do is I obviously just like I did my show, we'll concentrate on what the hub of the day was. And in Philly, it's real easy to get a hub right now. And then just kind of spin off. I do this thing called Mike Unleashed, where I have commentary on things that are going on in life, absurdities or modern culture things or things like that. So that keeps me amused. And the Bet Rivers people really like that to the point where they're putting that out separate now. They're taking my Unleashed out of the whole podcast broadcast and they're putting that out there. So that's been going very well.
I love the interviews that you've done. You had Stephen A. Smith on, you had Angelo Cataldi on. What I like about your style, Mike, and it was this way when you were in radio too. It's not an interview. It's a conversation. Like, you don't have bullet points that you go down. You talk to people, and I think you're really good at that.
Well, see, I think that's some of my newspaper background, because when you're questioning somebody, you kind of have to develop a rapport, and you want them to trust you. And the way to trust you is you talk to them like a normal human being. You bring something familiar to the table with them, and they say, well, yeah, he's a regular guy, so I wouldn't be afraid to answer a tough question from him. That's the way I've always done it. But I think that's the newspaper part in me. And and really, as many interviews that I've done, the more comfortable you get somebody, a subject with you, the more they're going to give you the insight. And I'm out to get stuff that I don't think other people get.
Right.
So that's really how I try to base my interviews. And I want to be kind of exploratory with them and bring out their really good answers instead of the stock answers that they're normally used to giving. Because all subjects, especially in sports, they want to give you a couple words and get out. But if you can engage them in conversation, I can tell you a quick story.
Okay.
The spring training, Matt Harrison, from the Phillies. He's no longer with the team, but I saw him in front of his locker, and I go, he'd probably be a really interesting guy to talk to. But he's getting dressed, and he was getting ready for a workout, and I saw that he had a pair of these Jordan sneakers on that had a patent leather toe to them. And I have those.
Oh wow.
I
Okay.
thought I had the most unique pair of sneakers ever. I found them on the Nike website. I got them, and I said, I've never seen anybody else have this pair. And he had the high tops. And he goes, "Oh, so you're a sneakerhead?" And then we had a conversation about that, and I got him to trust me, and then we just talked about baseball and life at that point.
That's an awesome story. Do you miss radio, Mike? I had Angelo on.
Josh Harrison, not Matt Harrison. It was Josh Harrison.
Okay, there you go, Josh Harrison.
Did I miss it? Yeah, I did miss it, Jason, because it came at a time when Philly sports got really hot.
Yeah.
That fall season, you had the Sixers colliding with the Phillies, colliding with the Eagles, and all three of them were championship viable. So that's I missed that hot interaction that was happening. Now, had they been lousy during that period of time, I don't think I would have missed it at all, because a lot of my years were spent with lousy teams, and it's really a struggle to come up with topics that are interesting enough for your audience. But the heat of last fall with all that stuff going on at once, I miss talking to the people about.
Yeah, I'm sure. I had Angelo Cataldi on my old TV show. In fact, he was my final guest. He said, the intensity of having to do a 4-hour show every day, that really wears on you. Did you find that too?
Listen, I can understand that he said that. And I've had him on a couple times on my podcast, and we've explored these very topics. He was the hardest working, most organized guy I've ever seen. So he poured it out really seriously. Like the dedication he had to do that show for that many years, I can see where that would just gut him. And I don't know how he did it for that long. I always used to talk to him. I said, "When are you going to step away?" I mean, this was years ago. I said, well, has it not ground you up yet? He's getting up at 3:30 every morning.
Yeah.
And he is organizing every little segment of his show. He just conducted his show that way. My show, I conducted a little different. I kept it a little looser. I hopped from subject to subject based on what the callers were talking about. And so I wasn't, and he's anal, and he admits it. And so he couldn't afford to leave gaps in the show. He just was terrified to leave any gaps. He's just so ultra organized. So I can see where it really, at his age, it ground him up. I was astonished, and I respect him so greatly for him being able to do that. That morning show is no joke.
Yeah.
It just grinds you up, and 4 hours a day, getting up to 30 and having to go to bed at 7 o'clock. And he was a regimented guy. I did a morning show at WMMR, and I really could never get the hang of falling asleep early enough and getting enough sleep to be energized the way I should have been for a morning show. That he didn't allow for that. He was totally dedicated and regimented towards it.
Well, you're talking to a guy who wakes up at 1 o'clock in the morning to go to produce the morning news at 2:30 in the morning. So yeah, it's hard.
So you know it. You know what the grind is.
Yeah, so if I start babbling incoherently, Mike, you'll understand, okay? I want to ask you, and this is, forgive me, because this is the oldest radio cliche, the whole Mount Rushmore thing. Do you have a Mount Rushmore of Philly sports talk? I have mine, but I want to hear yours.
Of Philly sports talkers?
Yeah, Philly sports talk radio.
Yeah. Angelo is definitely the first one that I would put on there. Steve Fredericks was a legend before he was a legend. And, a lot of people would probably put Eskin on that. I wouldn't, because I just have such a personal dislike that I can't give myself into that premise. But I don't know. I've really never thought about that. And people say that I should be on it also. I never think of myself that way. I always think of myself that, like, I had a job to do, and I wasn't out to be on a Mount Rushmore. The task at hand was to be entertaining and informative and honest. And that's how I tried to do it. I hope people saw it that way. And I was happy with the way I did it. I didn't try to curry any favor with anybody. It got me in trouble a lot. But I always looked at it two ways, Sports Talk Radio. One was that I was an advocate for the fan, having grown up here and seeing all the bad times the fans got from bad management. They didn't really care that much about satisfying their fan base. So I thought that I would be an advocate for that. And the other thing was just to be honest and know that my client was the people listening. My client was not a team or a coach that I had to patronize. So as long as I did it that way, I was satisfied.
Yeah, I actually, you mentioned the four names on my Mount Rushmore. I've got you on there. I got Angelo on there. I got Steve Fredericks on there, and I have Howard Eskin on there. But I'd make sure you and Eskin were on opposite ends. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And listen,
Well,
I have to ask you about that because you guys did work together for a while. After you and Steve worked together, and I remember listening to you guys when you guys announced the change that Steve was going to go to evenings and Eskin was going to come work with you, and how shocked you guys were. I was shocked listening, and I've heard you talk about this that you guys would literally go through a 4-hour show and not say a word to one another. And I don't know how you did it, but as a listener, I actually thought the show was pretty good. How'd you pull that off?
I don't know. I don't think I pulled it off very well. Listen, he was the opposite of what I was. I was a journalist who just wanted to tell the truth, and he didn't know how to do a show with anybody else. He didn't know how to play into somebody and make the other person look good. I don't think he had a concept of team, and he was a guy that I always resented because I saw what people would do to him. They would curry favor by him by patting him on the head. This is my honest opinion of him. I think it's pretty accurate, and nobody. You can buy him with kindness.
Okay.
And I thought, and that especially happened with the Eagles because I witnessed many times Andy Reid chewing up to him and patting him on the head and the whole thing. And when you give in to that, then you give in to not being giving objective analysis of the whole situation. And to me, that's not what you should be as a sports talk host. You should be giving your listener honesty. You shouldn't be giving them whipped cream takes because you somehow feel some kinship with the organization.
All right. Let me ask you about Fredericks. To me, the guy was a legend. How did you guys get paired together? What was it like at first? Tell me, take me through that.
Well, it's really the origin of how I got to sports talk radio, which was totally by accident. And young students ask me all the time, "Well, how did you get to?" I just had by accident. I can't like I would love to sit here and give you a blueprint for it, but there wasn't any blueprint for me. We were all members of the Inquirer sports staff, and I had a law degree at that time, and I was content to leave newspapers and media and practice libel law or maybe dabble in sports agency. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. But then WIP was created. And so they were looking for content, and their morning show was with Tom Brookshire. And Tom was kind of up in years, and he didn't really want to do 4 hours. He was content to do 3. And so he gave an hour of his show to us. I forget who had the idea. It might have been Al Morgani, it might have been Angelo,
Mm-hmm.
but they had the idea. Why don't we go on for an hour and talk about Philly sports from our angle and what we're covering? So we created a show called the Morning Sports Page. So whoever was covering the big event at the time would be one of the guests on the Morning Sports Page. And Angelo took to it really well to the point where they offered him the full-time job with Brookshire. And it's funny because he was a brilliant journalist. He was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for his coverage of the Eagles. He was the most serious journalism I had ever worked with. And I could not believe that he made that transition over to radio. And he did it. And he says this, he admits this, is because he got tired of being edited by people who he didn't respect editing his copy. We
Right.
writers all look at it like we know more about writing than the editor who's not out in the field writing. He's in the office. So we kind of would resent that. It was a natural thing that journalists go through. But Angelo took it to the point where he's like, I can't take this anymore. I'm leaving the whole industry. And so when he left, it was very strange because from my morning sports page experience, they offered me weekend hours, and I did a show with Stan Hochman, and we call ourselves the Weekend Warriors. We did it from 10 to 2 on Saturday, and so our show was really good, and so Eskin at that point was doing afternoon drive, and he left to go to TV. And out of the blue, they offered me the evening drive slot with Steve.
Okay.
And I didn't really know Steve. I knew that he irritated me as I listened to him as I was growing up.
Wait.
So
You didn't like him at first?
I'm sorry.
You didn't like him at first?
No, when I listened to Steve, I would get irritated.
Okay.
I really would, and I would fire back and I'd listen to him. And so here I am now working with him. I'm going, oh my God, how am I going to make this work? He's kind of arrogant. I'm kind of arrogant. I go, I don't know what kind of blend this will be. But here's the thing about Steve. He's one of the smartest guys I've ever met. And
Yeah.
I learned that right away. And what he learned, he was up in years at that point in his radio career. And he read the tea leaves on this show. And he knew that I was a younger guy who was kind of a smartass. And he reasoned in his head that it would be better for him to be the straight man and let me be kind of the wild man, or the bratty guy. And the blend of it was like he would almost scold me sometimes like a dad would, and I go and I'd reevaluate it, and so we had this natural dynamic that I really didn't expect to have with him, but it was because he made it happen.
It was gold. It was gold. Mike, I want to show you something, and I want you to tell me what pops into your head when you see this. Can you see that? For people listening to this and not watching, it's an old, I guess maybe early to mid '90s, Mike, a 610 WIP Sports Radio newspaper
Yeah,
ad.
that's one of the first things. Yeah, one of the first promo sheets. I saw that picture. I've saved this picture. It was tweeted out, I think.
It's great.
Yeah, Chuck Cooperstein was in there.
Yep.
He's a huge name in Dallas with broadcasting. I didn't realize that we were 4 to 8. So when we first started, I guess we were 4 to 8, and Jody, and then they kind of tailored it down after that to the point where we were then 2 to 6.
Yeah, I have that myself. I have that in a scrapbook. So I can't talk about Fredericks and your time with Fredericks without asking you. You had I guess it was an April Fool's joke, and it was classic. And of all people, Kurt Schilling was involved in this, and I know
this is
when you guys were still friends.
I was close to Schilling at the time. Schilling was a monster sports talk radio fan.
Yeah, tell me about this.
First started. I'm sorry.
Tell me about this.
Yeah, he would he loved sports talk radio. So and he specifically loved Steve and I. And I don't know whether he thought he could relate to me because I was kind of sarcastic and he was sarcastic, and he used to love how I used to punch at Steve and get Steve all irritated. And so what's funny, because we were doing a remote in Westchester one day. I forget the bar we were doing it in, but the Phillies had a day game. And so it's about 5 o'clock, and I look in the audience at people that are watching the show, and it's Schilling and his wife Shonda. I guess they lived in Kennett Square. On their way home after the game, they stopped to see our show. So I got to be friendly with them, and I had this idea for an April Fool's joke. The thing about April Fool's jokes, you can't do them every year because people are on to you. But I thought that I had this really good idea because at the time, Schilling, like, they weren't willing to pay Schilling. And it wasn't acrimonious yet, but I had enough material to think that this would work, where I literally traded him on the air to the Cleveland Indians. And I made it a reasonable trade on who they got back. And Darren, who's my producer on the podcast now, was in on it. And I said, listen, I'm going to do this thing where I'm saying, Steve, I'm getting all this information from really good sources that of all people, Schilling might be traded. And Steve was just out of his mind with disappointment. And so I even played out the ruse where I went outside. We were doing the show at Philly Rock, the live show. I went outside and I got my cell phone as if I was talking to my sources. And I was actually literally talking to my producer, going, listen, I'm just faking Steve out here. That are my sources. But in the meantime, I had gotten in touch with Schilling, and I said, do me a favor. Call exactly at 4 o'clock. Here's what I'm trying to do. And I've traded you, and I want to you react to the trade, and this is a big April Fool's joke we're playing on everybody, including Steve. So like clockwork, he called at 4 o'clock, and I said, well, here's the guy. I said, I have the official word. I announced the trade like 10 minutes before we had Schilling on the air. I said, the trade is final. Kurt Schilling's been traded to the Cleveland Indians for whoever, and we're trying to get in touch with Kurt now, and blah 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 blah. And so he called at 4 o'clock, and he said, I just want to tell the people of Philadelphia I really love playing here. And then he played into the whole thing beautifully. And Fredericks went crazy. I remember saying, this is an outrage. Kurt, I am outraged. I can't believe the Phillies would do something like this. And he went on for like 5 minutes.
That's a very good Fredericks, by the way.
Yeah, I took the conversation with Schilling out about 10 minutes, and I go, and you know what? This is not the end of this, Steve. And he goes, well, what's the end? I said, the end is that I just played a hell of an April Fool's joke on you and the people of Philadelphia. So Schilling's laughing on the other end, and it had. I did it like 3 years later, where I acquired Miguel Tejada too, but. Yeah, that was the first April Fool's joke I did, but primarily I wanted to do it against Steve because I knew he would have that kind of reaction.
You know what I always admired about Steve, Mike? I mean, I think we all remember what he went through before he worked with you, the drug situation. He was on the front page of the newspaper. I've always had so much respect for him because the man hit rock bottom. He brought himself back up to the top, but then when he's working with you and he's doing sports talk radio in the afternoon, you guys are doing remotes at bars. And this guy, he's getting over an addiction. How did he deal with all that? That could not have been easy.
I was very sensitive to that. And I had a long conversation with him about that. And he said that doesn't bother him at all because, in fact, it helps his recovery because he then sees people that used to be him. And it reminds him that's not where he ever wanted to go back.
Got it.
So, yeah, I was really sensitive about that. But he used to use those things to help his recovery.
Makes sense. What did he do for you in terms of, because like you said, you were fairly new to radio when you guys were paired together. What did he do for you to kind of turn you into the sports talk host you became?
He could talk about anything. Like I could bring stuff up to him and he would get it. And he would be able to continue the conversation to the point where we were able to go back and forth. That's why I say he was really ultra intelligent. There wasn't a thing that he didn't know anything about. So when I would cite something that was going on in just a newspaper story, a story of modern culture, he would flow with it. And he also taught me about radio. Because I didn't know anything about radio. I didn't know about the timing of radio. I didn't know hitting brakes on time. And I didn't know that it was more the more important thing about sports talk radio was entertainment rather than interviewing people. And that was the whole transition of WIP. Our program director Tom Bigby said, "You guys are no longer journalists,
right? And
I don't care what kind of great journalists you are." And I ask provocative questions to guests because guests are a death note for sports talk radio. You are now entertainers, and you need to present the information that you have in an entertaining way. Because if you're not entertaining to the people, your information is irrelevant. Because people aren't going to stay with you. It's just it becomes mundane radio. So that played right into me because I have all these opinions about other stuff, and I like to have fun with it. And it was okay to me that we weren't 100% X and O sports. And that I think was the whole thing on why WIP was successful because we changed that whole dynamic of people coming on and talking about Sin and Owen and this play and that play. And we turned it into a conversation that you would have at a family picnic, where you everybody's got an opinion on something, and you're going, you're full of crap, and that's the most interesting listening when you have that kind of dynamic with people going back and forth on things they think are right, things that you think are right.
Now that's fascinating. You said Tom Bigby said guests were not good for sports talk radio. Did you agree?
No, he hated guests.
Did you agree with that?
He hated guests. He said that gives people a chance to turn away from you. Wow. Because it's an interview is not going to be interesting to the mainstream over like a couple minutes.
Wow.
And so if you're going to keep a guest on for 10 minutes, that's death radio. People are now tuning you out and they're going to another station. And once they go to another station, they might not come back to you.
Gotcha. Okay. Before I wrap this up, you mentioned a while back MMR. Now, I want to ask you about that. You were a rock and roll guy for a little bit on the radio. How did that all come about? And
listen, I had a blast doing that, first of all. I was kind of a free agent at WIP. and I was working on an old contract. So, uh, what WMMR wanted to start a different morning show, and so they poached me and Joe Conklin with this concept that we would call ourselves the Philly guys, and it would be very mildly about sports, more about music and modern culture and having actors and actresses as guests and I was totally into it. It was a different vein I wanted to go down. I loved it. I got to experience a lot of interviewing rockers. In fact, I got to interview Jimmy Page at Led Zeppelin, which was one of the highlights. It's funny because there's a story behind that also. Having interviewed a lot of bratty athletes and politicians in my journalistic career, I'm unfazed by how big the celebrity is.
Okay.
And so there was a junket up at the Plaza Hotel in New York for the release that Jimmy Page and Robert Plant had done for Led Zeppelin, all Led Zeppelin's catalog of music, and it was in they wrapped it in like a 4 CD set, and so everybody got a chance to go up to the Plaza and interview either Page or Robert Plant, and Page was one of my all-time favorites. So as fate would have it, I got Jimmy Page. And I go, wow. But so I went up there and we're in the green room waiting for the PR people to call each one of us for our 7 minutes with either Robert Plant or Jimmy Page. I see all these disc jockeys and they're freaking out. They're all nervous and they're like, they're scared to death. And I'm going, well, it's just a guy, it's just a man. So I went in and I went into the room and I'm sitting on the sofa and there's a guy that's looking at the window of the Plaza Suite. And I'm thinking, okay, this is one of the PR people. He's got a sweatsuit on, tracksuit on,
Okay.
like a soprano style tracksuit. And he turns around and he's got really short hair. I go, wow, that's Jimmy
It's
Page.
him, right?
And he looked like a professor. And so he came over and we interviewed it. And I interviewed him like uh, like not like I was in awe of some rock god.
Right.
I interviewed him like a person because that's what he was presenting to me now. And so at that point, he was a family man with children and the whole bit. And I asked him questions like, okay, everybody has seen the video of your wild hair, for your drug-addled wild hair, and you're playing your guitar with the bow. I said, when your children see that, what's the reaction? So that was the way to get into a conversation with him where he wasn't going to think I was some, starstruck disc jockey that just wanted to, oh God, a whole lot of love. That was the greatest song ever. So that was a really enlightening experience interviewing him to the point where we were still talking and his PR people had to come in and say, okay, that's enough. But but now I did stuff like that at WMMR and interviewed actors, and Keira Knightley, who became a big star, came in when she was 17 years old. Her first movie was Bend It Like Beckham. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, like 10 years later, she's a mega star. It was fascinating to me.
See, but Mike, this is why I've always found you fascinating, because you think of all the stuff you've done. You've done sports radio, rock radio, you've done TV, you've done newspapers, you've done magazines, you got this winery now. Do you ever look back and think, okay, how did this all happen? You've done so much.
I'm a kid from Bristol, PA, who was educated in regular public schools. But in seeing, and that was really a blue-collar town, where not many people got out of there and really did something magnificent with their lives. And I just wanted to have my mind expanded. So I tried to fill it with as much as I could to whatever I was doing that they couldn't take away from me. Like getting a law degree is something that nobody's ever going to be able to take away from me.
Right.
Taking different, like I remember taking different courses in college that were boring, but I just wanted to experience them because I just wanted to fill my head with as much as I could, and then eventually, like something I would zero in on something. So I've kind of always been inquisitive like that and open-minded about learning about different things.
All right, Mike, before I let you go, can you help me get a little more sophisticated? So I know you're a big cigar aficionado, okay? My father is a big cigar guy, and I'm trying to become a big cigar guy myself. So I recently went and I bought some, and I don't know if you can help me, like, tell me if these are good cigars or not.
Okay. I'll do that for you. What do you got?
I got to put readers on because I'm getting old, Mike.
Okay.
A Macanudo Inspirato. Macanudo Inspirato? Is that all right?
Macanudo is a mild cigar.
Okay.
It won't hurt you. It won't bite you.
All right. That's another Macanudo. Brick House?
I've never heard of Brick House.
Okay, that's probably
What
not...
is it? Is it a Dominican blend? If you have a Dominican blend cigar, you'll be okay.
I'll be honest with you.
And you want to get a Connecticut wrapper, which is a mild wrapper, because you probably don't want to smoke anything that's too harsh.
Mike, that's all over my head, man. I don't know. This is
You want to buy a good cigar though for whoever you're buying it for.
Okay.
I smoke Monte Cristo white labels.
Okay, Monte Cristo. Okay.
And it's a Dominican cigar, but it's creamier and it's not going to kill you. And it's satisfying every single time I've had it. So yeah, Macanudo. I'm not Macanudo. Monte Cristo white label is my go-to cigar.
Okay, I've heard you talk about Ashtons. Is that a good one too?
They're a nice cigar. They're a nice cigar. They would be, they're the Holt cigar, the Fuentes, who are cigar manufacturers. That's their cigar specifically for Holt's, the Ashton.
Okay.
And the Ashton is a nice cigar. It's a mild cigar. You'll like an Ashton.
Romeo and Julieta? Is that?
That's a good cigar.
Okay.
Solid cigar.
It's a good cigar. All right.
Romeo and Julieta. Cuban Romeo and Julieta will be a little higher in quality than that Dominican there, but that's a good cigar.
Padron?
Padron, nice cigar. You'll be satisfied with that.
All right. That's all I got. Okay. Like I said, because it's like I like having a cigar with my dad. It's a good father-son thing, and I'm enjoying a good cigar.
It really is. Now, do you sip a little liquor with that?
A little Courvoisier sometimes.
You can't go wrong. A little Courvoisier, a little bourbon if you want to go a little sweeter to balance the cigar. Maybe a Grand Marnier you do.
Hey, Mike, this has been so much fun. When I started this, like I said at the top, I wanted you as my first guest because, like I said, I've known you for so long and I've admired your work for so long. I can't thank you enough for doing this. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I hope to have you on again soon.
Jason, my pleasure. Good luck with the project, and thanks for having me.
Real quick, before I let you go, again, so you've got the Mike Missanelli podcast from Bet Rivers. You've got the Jacob Media post-game show. Talk about that.
Yes, after every Eagles game, Jacob Media YouTube channel or 6abc.com is where you can get it on their website. And the podcast you can. People go, well, how do I get your podcast? Podcasts confuse people.
I know.
For some reason. So, how do I call it up? The easiest thing to do is get your Google search bar. I'll put Mike Missanelli podcast in there, and it'll pop right up, and you'll get it on any podcast venue: Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, Google, and all you do is subscribe for free, and it'll come to your inbox. Every time we do one.
And very quickly, because my producer's rapping me, your winery, it's down in Cape May, right? Cape May Courthouse?
Cape May Courthouse.
Okay.
It's called the Tally Vineyards. In fact, Jason, a couple weeks ago, I was actually out in the fields helping snip the Chardonnay harvest.
You picked the grapes?
Which was a really fun experience.
I love it. Mike, this was so much fun. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason. Take care.
You too. And thank you for watching episode 1 of the Philly Sports Convo. We'll see you next time. Stay connected with us on social media, join our Discord community, and grab merch from our shop. The Philly Sports Convo is a Blue Eye Visual production.